automobiles, estates and cars of Bon vivant George Whittell Jr. One of George Whittell Jr.'s many boats photoed by Jarvis Photography. George Whittell Jr. was the scion of an immense Gilded Age fortune, amassed by his grandfathers through banking, transportation, real estate and utility ownership in San Francisco, then consolidated by the marriage of his parents in 1879. He grew up in a mansion on Nob Hill, the toniest address in the city at the time. His father was a member of the most prestigious clubs and social circles. Whittell never sought to follow in his family's ambitious, entrepreneurial footsteps, though. His goal was to live a sybaritic life, one founded on adventure, unconventionality and, most of all, speed. George Whittell liked all things fast, says Brad Carter, operations director at Whittell's Thunderbird Lodge, the private estate the Playboy built on Lake Tahoe. Cars, planes, boats and women. Whittell began his oppositional antics at quite an early age, running away with the Barnum and Bailey circus after high school rather than attending college, eloping with a chorus girl rather than marrying the society bride his parents had selected for him, and buying himself a position in the Italian army rather than waiting for the U.S. to join World War I. But it was two events in the late 1920s and early 1930s that really allowed him to amp up his behavior. The first was his decision to remove his family's assets from the stock market in 1929, months before the Great Crash. He took the $50 million that had accrued bullishly since his father's death in 1922 and invested it in Canadian gold. The second was his mother's death in 1931, which left him as the sole heir to this literal treasure trove. There's a surprising challenge to preparing a car like Kim and Mitch McCulloch's 1954 Jaguar XK120 for judging in the 2017 Pebble Beach Concours D and No. 39, Elegance and No. 39, S preservation class. Effectively, for his needs, his wealth was nearly unlimited, says Thunderbird Lodge chief executive and curator Bill Watson of Whittell's fortune, roughly equivalent to $700 million today. He loved fast, sleek race cars in his early days, but also the grand touring cars, and now he was able to spend lavishly on all of these. And spend he did. In 1929, just months before Black Friday, Whittell ordered his first Duesenberg, at the time, the most potent, expensive and exclusive American car brand. This was a Model J convertible coupe. He had the prestigious Murphy Coach Building Company in Pasadena construct the body. Shortly thereafter, he ordered a second Duesi, a Model J Berline sedan. He had Murphy body that one, too. Thus began a love affair with the Indiana Mark, part of the innovative, design-forward car conglomerate E.L. Cord assembled along with makers Auburn and Cord. Whittell's connection eventually resulted in his purchasing 4 more Duesenbergs over the next 4 years, the largest number anyone bought new. 5 of these 6 cars were for personal use, the other was seemingly delivered to one of his many mistresses. In addition to cars, Whittell began to amass an animal collection, some brought back with him from African adventures. I'm not talking domestic dogs and cats, says Watson. I'm talking about a menagerie, which included tigers, a giraffe, an elephant, a bear and so many more. A lion cub named Bill was one of Whittell's favorite companions, and it often rode along with him in his cars. After being deaccessioned, one of Whittell's Duesis eventually ended up in a private collection Brad Carter visited. It had scratches on the seat, Carter says. He used to let this 300-pound lion sit shotgun with him, and its claws would come out and put holes in the seat. Reach back into your competition press and Auto-Week archives. Pull out the July 29, 1967, issue, flip to the classifieds and right there on page 19, between spots for a 67 Alfa Romeo GTV. Whittell had all sorts of wild pets. Whittell clearly needed someplace private and secure to store all this booty. He settled on Nevada, thanks to its lax state tax code. It was something of a haven for the wealthy and well-heeled, and started buying up property on Lake Tahoe's east shore, eventually acquiring 95% of that state's lakefront coastline. Though he'd originally planned to develop the 40,000 acres he purchased, this never came to fruition, and Whitt instead decided to focus his energies on building an ideal summer playground for himself, his cars, his animals, friends and consorts. This rustic mass, perched on a rocky cove, became known as the Thunderbird Lodge. Here, Whitt indulged in womanizing, gambling, drinking and his love of speed, and he worked equally hard to avoid any kind of legal or regulatory scrutiny. The Thunderbird was basically his icon, Carter says. In Native American culture, the Thunderbird is on the top of the totem pole because it flies above the rest. And George Whittell considered himself above the rest. Flying above the rest was what he did, literally, in his fleet of planes. He had a role in 3 aircraft, Watson says. He called it Whittell's Air Force. He had the DC-2, shown above, his domestic, luxury aircraft in which he flew friends to boxing matches in Chicago and on social junkets. He had the amphibious airplane, the Grumman Goose, that he used to fly between the Bay Area and Lake Tahoe. He had the interest in a 307 Stratoliner, which he sold before the plane was delivered because it couldn't fly non-stop from the west coast to Europe as he had hoped. Visualize this, the crack of a full-race flathead Ford milliseconds before the pre-war Ford that powers spits a rooster tail of New Jersey sand, while period-correct racers, in period-correct cars, wait. Whittell Jr. avoided the stock market crash, making him one of the richest men in the U.S. Photo by Jarvis Photography. His vehicular collections piece de resistance was the Thunderbird, a 55-foot, mahogany and stainless steel, twin V12-powered marvel. Famed naval architect John L. Hacker designed it, and it was built by Huskins Boat Works in Bay City, Michigan, at a cost of $87,000, about $1.5 million today. The boat is a one-off streamlined modern masterpiece, and it looks like a burnished, wooden, floating South Beach hotel. The Thunderbird is, once again, at the lodge, after a series of owners, including casino magnate William F. Harrah. The Thunderbird Lodge Preservation Society got it back, and it can now be rented for pleasure cruises. This is not the case with Whittell's cars and planes, all sold following his death in 1969 at 87. The Duesenbergs occasionally appear on the auction or concours circuit and create a frisson of memory. His one-off 1933 supercharged fishtail speedster, designed by Gordon Buick, Cord 810 and Auburn 851, was shown at Pebble Beach in 2008. His 1929 Mistress car sold for $1.7 million at RM's 2010 Amelia Island auction. His glorious, all-aluminum 1931 Murphy-bodied coupe sold at Gooding & Co.'s 2011 Pebble Beach auction for $10.3 million, which, at the time, was a record for an American car. The cars are certainly a window into the man, says Watson. Duesenbergs reflect this position of brash, unbridled speed and passion with the elegance of San Francisco high society in America's Gilded Age. He was a man of contradictions, and that is certainly reflected in the cars he drove. By Brett Burke. Car Life, Car News, Classic Cars, People, Luxury, Other News, People.